Welcome to On the Issues. I'm Phoenix City Councilwoman Thelda Williams. This summer, Phoenix voters will decide two important ballot issues. One will shape transportation for decades to come, and the other would continue reform of the city's civilian pension system. In 2013, voters approved changes to the Phoenix civilian pension system that will save hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 20 years. But we didn't stop there. Last fall, the mayor asked me to co-chair a citizens committee to find new ways to cut pension costs and improve employee recruitment and retention. We drafted a set of reforms that the City Council has approved, sending to the voters this summer. Here to tell us more about the proposal is a citizens committee member, Rick DeGraw. Rick, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Thelda. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for all the time you spent on this.
Well, it's been a long haul.
It has. You were on the original one. I mean, you've seen us, you've been working on this, what, 3, 4, 5 years?
I actually chaired the original group of 15 business people. We spent more than a year and a half. I think we spent about 700 meeting hours and study hours over that period of time looking at the very complex pension issues that face the city of Phoenix. And then I was asked to serve on this last commission, which was a much smaller group, but I think we did a good job in fixing some of the small errors that had occurred previously.
Yeah, it was interesting because we received a lot of criticism a year ago when we had the council subcommittee that reviewed this, that we didn't have business input. And that was the reason for this task force to be made up primarily of business people like yourself.
Right, and it's great to have business input, and I think it's appropriate. But what people have to remember is that pensions are a long-term issue. It's not what's happening this year or next year. It's what's happening over a 20-year period. Because pensions are basically a huge, long-term savings account that the city puts together to help people retire. And I think some of the issues that we've run into have been misunderstood. I mean, if you look at the average city employee, their pension's about $30,000 a year. After 20, 25, or 30 years of service, their pension's about $30,000 a year. Now, yes, there have been some stories about a few people in the city that have gotten very large pensions. And I'm not going to deal with whether they're appropriate or not. The fact is, the average pensioner gets $30,000, and they need to be protected. And there are people that come to work for the city of Phoenix that look at everything. They look at what the salary is, what the benefits are, what the working conditions are, and they look at what the future pension benefits are. We want to get the best people for the city of Phoenix. And the fact of the matter is that we've had to take a couple of years to get this system adjusted. But again, looking at it long term, the system will be healthy. It will survive. It will be able to get through the ups and downs. And we'll have a solid system in the end.
You know, I think it's really interesting that you just stated it that way because, one, I believe that a lot of people work for the city at a lower wage that they could get in the business community because of the security, the long-term goals, and the pension. Yes. I think that's extremely important. They know their family's going to be protected years to come. But two, having this exercise, we learned the hard way that if it's not right, we can't recruit and retain.
Right. And you're absolutely correct. You brought that up several times during the various meetings. When we did the first reform a couple of years ago, we had numbers that were projected by the auditors, and they just weren't perfect. And so as the new system went into effect, we found out that there were employees paying as much as 17% of their salary for a pension. Now, when you have people making $28,000 and $29,000 a year and paying 17% of that for their future pension, they just can't live on it. And so making some adjustments so that there's a cap. Now, the fact is that with the new laws that will be passed hopefully this summer, employees will still pay 11% of their salary toward their pension. Now, that's a lot of money, but it's much fairer than 17%. And it's the kind of thing that people really should do. Sadly enough, they don't. Nobody can live just on Social Security when they get older.
Absolutely not.
That's right.
And even IRAs, I've had too many friends that have said, oh, I retired and quickly learned I had to either totally change my lifestyle or go back to work because I think I'm going to live longer in 10, 15 years.
Well, and when you look at the 401ks and the other approaches, they are severely affected by the stock market, just like the pension plan investments were adjusted or hit by the stock market crash of the last 7 or 8 years. The fact is that when you're basing your pension only on the stock market, you're going to be in trouble somewhere along the line. And putting away 10 or 11% of your salary so that you can retire at not a great pension, but a livable pension, that's what we were most concerned about. Now, we weren't dealing with police or fire. Correct. We were only dealing with the civilian population in the city of Phoenix. And no one is living high on their pension from the city of Phoenix, but they are able to survive and live adequately. And that's a reward for spending 20 or 30 years serving the citizens of Phoenix.
And I think it's interesting too, when people think of the employees of city, I think they think of the people they see or deal directly with. They don't see all the people behind the scenes, like the chemists in the water department. I mean, we have a very highly educated workforce. And it's varied. I mean, it's across the board. We have manual laborers and to multiple degrees at very technical jobs, whether it's the airport, it's water services, even in planning. I mean, that engineering skills and the number of engineers we have, I don't think people recognize the quality that we're working with. And if we want to continue to have high quality, we've got to offer something.
Well, when you look at the fact that we have one of the greatest city airports in the world, located conveniently for everybody. It is a very complex place to run. But I live in an 80-year-old house in Central Phoenix. And the people I'm thankful to are the folks I never see. The ones who go back into my sewer line behind my house and control the cockroaches and all the other pests. And I mean, I never see them. They're in and out of there on a regular basis. But I love them because they make it all livable. And the folks that take care of our streets, we seldom really see, except when you do really major work on a street, what happens. But these people are out there working every single day. Mm-hmm. They're out there when it's 115 degrees out. They're out there when it's 34 degrees out. And they deserve our thanks. And the way we can give them thanks is by having an adequate pension system to not only get them in here when they're younger and agree to stay with the city for a period of time, but then to help them survive when they retire.
I think it was part of this. We looked at so many different plans, different types of plans. And people say, well, why didn't you just get a 401k? Remember how much it cost?
Well, if you implemented a 401k program in the city and knocked out everything else, it would be $500 million in additional costs over the next 15 to 20 years. $500 million. And it would not do anything to make it better. In fact, it would make it worse in the long run. You know, sometimes you just got to stay with what you have and say it's going to cost so much to change it and it's going to be a negative change. Why not stay with what we have? That's what we decided upon. I think we've made it more equal for new employees as it was for older employees. And we've made it fair so that employees in effect pay about the same as what the city will pay as it all evens out. And again, we have to think of this over a long-term period. 20 years, 30 years, Is it going to be healthy over that period of time? Not is it going to be healthy tomorrow. Nothing's going to turn everything around from the last 8 years of recession that we had. And I think we've reached that point where it's fair, it's equitable, it's worthwhile for employees, and it will help the city in the long run and save money.
I think so too. And you know, truthfully, when you look at it, it is affordable for the city.
It is.
It truly is. And I think that was extremely important in this process, because it only had to be fair to the employees, but fair to the taxpayers. And I think what we have come up with has really done that.
Well, and if you look at the city of Phoenix, I believe the number of employees per capita in the city of Phoenix is now lower than it's been since the early 1970s when I first got here. The city has been responsible in making sure they keep the numbers low and in making sure they're able to balance the budget on a regular basis. And the city, luckily, has to pay their pension fees on time. If they didn't, we'd have real problems. But I think the city's being responsible, and I hope the citizens think the city's being responsible and vote yes this summer.
I hope so too. I want to thank you so much for all the many hours and hours and hours that you have spent helping us with this issue. We've come to rely on your expertise, because you probably know the pension system in the city of Phoenix as well as anybody at staff.
It is frightening.
It is frightening. It's true. But again, thank you so much. And I just want you to know you really are appreciated. And I'd like to have citizens see that other citizens volunteer, help us work through as many of these problems. And you're a prime example of that. So thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Thelda.
When we return, we'll hear more about a measure to transform transportation in Phoenix over the next 30 years. Keep watching on The Issues.
What would you do if you saw a dog, a cat, or a horse that looked like this? Animal cruelty and neglect is a crime that needs to be reported.
I'm Councilwoman Thelda Williams, here with my rescued pets, Henry and Cheyenne.
And I'm Councilman Michael Nowakowski, asking for your help.
If you ever suspect animal cruelty, call Crime Stop, the Arizona Humane Society, or the Sheriff's Office.
Animal cruelty is a crime.
And together we could stop it. The transportation measure on the ballot will usher in major renovations and changes to Phoenix streets and expand and increase service for our bus and light rail systems. Here to tell us more about the proposed transportation changes is Maria Hyatt, Director of Phoenix Public Transit Department. Maria, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Councilwoman.
Talk about a little bit, describe the committee that worked on this to come up with this plan.
Oh my gosh, we had 34 of the most brilliant people, all with varied backgrounds. We had people who are in the industry. We had people who are economists, who are financial experts. We had Mary Peters as our chair, and I always sound that like it's just rolling off my tongue. I mean, Mary Peters was the Secretary of Transportation for the federal government and has been in the industry since she started at ADOT as a secretary or as an aide. So an amazing, amazing woman. We had Maria Beyer, former councilwoman, and also an expert in her area, as well as Marty Schultz, who's been part of leading the transportation call for his entire career. But yes, this committee was an amazing group who was tasked by you and the rest of the council to go out, talk to the community, really find out what they wanted, what they felt was needed for our transportation system.
That's what I think is important. They talk to the community
Yes.
about transportation and what we needed.
Well, how else? I mean, I'm a transportation professional, but really you've got to go out and talk to the community and find out what they want, what they need, and what their vision really is for the future, because otherwise, you can make good guesses, but we don't always know. It's not ours, it's theirs. They need to be able to tell us what they want, where they want it, and when they want it, because we don't get to make those decisions. They are the best ones to be able to do it because they write it, they use it, their kids use it, their parents use it. That's really what it's about. And then the committee came back with, after listening to extensive public comment, I mean, we had over 100 meetings with the community. We received more than 3,800 comments back, individual comments from people on what they wanted to see. The committee tugged, wrangled, agonized over really how to package that back up. Looked for all of the different funding options, because that was another task that the mayor and council asked them to do, was really look at how should we pay for this. And in the end, they came back to the mayor and council and presented a plan that is a 35-year plan to really get us through 2050. And in a long horizon, that makes a lot of sense, because people can make plans. They can count on what is going to happen over that 35-year period. And the committee came back with a comprehensive transportation plan that included, and I think when we first started, we were thinking just transit, but we quickly heard from the community, you know, the bus is right on the street. When you're walking to the bus stop or to the light rail station, you're walking on a sidewalk, or better yet, you're taking a bike too, which I know on our bus system, we carry more than 1 million bikes a year. Light rail carries almost twice that many bikes per year. So having bike lanes, some shade on the way, all of that makes sense. And transit can't work in a vacuum. It has to go on those streets, and they must be in good repair also. So that's what we heard from the community, and why we moved from a transit plan to a comprehensive transportation plan that focuses on both sides.
And repairing our streets.
Yes.
That's a big issue in my district. Our streets are just absolutely crumbling. You can't drive to a park and ride to catch a bus or go to the train. Even in neighborhoods, it's been a tremendous problem and continues to grow. And when we are now on a 65-year repaving schedule, it just can't happen. Just can't happen.
And we heard a lot about that from the community.
And I'm sure you did, because I think it's because it is transportation plan. And I think also a lot of people didn't realize that they're already paying 0.4 cents towards the system that we're building now. And what we're talking about is increasing it 0.3% more. So that's 0.7 cents. So that's, what, a penny on a cup of coffee? If you go to an expensive cup of coffee?
Exactly. When we ran the numbers, you know, for the average person, you know, sales tax, what you pay a month, this adds up to an expensive cup of coffee or a hamburger. I mean, we're talking either Starbucks or Cartel or one of our other local coffees, or just a hamburger at Carl's Jr. That's just one of those in a month is what this plan would cost to each person.
You know, to me, a city has to have vision. It has to have good transportation. It has to listen to its citizens, and it has to be affordable. And I applaud you and the committee, because I think you hit it on all four. I think it's solid, it's reasonable. When you travel.
That was another thing that we talked about, and this is something that I do all the time. And granted, I'm a transit geek, so I fully acknowledge that. But whenever I go someplace, it's all about trying to find every which way to get where you need to go without ever taking a cab. And heaven forbid I never rent a car. So it's always finding out, and why is that okay? I go to Chicago, I go to San Francisco, I go to Washington, D.C., and you plan out your trip based on how am I going to get where I need to go on transit, whether it's a subway, a light rail, a bus, all of those things. And I know I'm not alone. A lot of people do that. So they go to San Francisco and they'll get on the bus. And the reason they'll get on the bus or the light rail or the streetcar is because they know it's going to be there about every 10 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes. They can count on where it's going to go, and it's a new adventure. That's what we need for Phoenix. I mean, when you talk about really what's the vision for the future, and why shouldn't Phoenix be like those other cities where you can just count on transit to take you where you need to go in the time that you need to get there? So every 10 to 15 minutes, a bus should be by. 10 to 15 minutes, a train should be by. And that's really what we also heard from the community as we talked to them, when I talk about it, they were like, yeah, you know, that's what I do too. So it was really exciting to hear other people say that they see that in other cities and want that same thing to happen here.
Well, I think there's the Super Bowl.
Oh, gosh.
Really pointed that out because, one, they came here because we now had a light rail system and better transportation. But their excitement and their pleasure on how well it worked and the number of people. How many people took the train?
126,000 people on one day alone. That was the Saturday before Super Bowl.
I mean,
that train was just packed all day long. And we were running buses because the train couldn't shove another person on. So we were running buses to go capture the people and bring them onto downtown.
So whenever I hear, oh, nobody will ride it, I don't want to hear that. I just don't want to hear that because people do ride it. And some do it for pleasure, convenience, and other necessity.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, a major city cannot be without a good transportation system. Just can't be. And we're always bragging how we want Phoenix to be the best. We're going to be the best. And this is a critical component of
really
being
is.
the best.
So some of the things that this plan does, it triples the amount of miles we currently have, light rail miles that we currently have in Phoenix over that 35-year period. It also adds in 75 miles of bus rapid transit. And we don't have bus rapid transit here. So really, when I explain bus rapid transit, it is another high capacity transit component. So, you know, when you talk about high capacity transit, most people don't know what that is, but that's light rail. It's bus rapid transit or it's a streetcar is really how they talk about it. But what bus rapid transit does is it moves more people faster than a regular bus. And so we've proposed 75 miles of bus rapid transit in our city. And we see a couple of cities who've really done this. And one of the things that when we talk about light rail and the return on investment, so not only does light rail get you where you want to go, and very efficient and can carry a whole lot of people, hence the Super Bowl. Just think Super Bowl, how many people?
It's amazing.
Carries a huge amount of people. But one of the things that light rail does for us is it also brings in economic development. So when we look at the 20 miles of light rail we currently have, we've seen a 7-to-1 return on our investment. But one of the things so that's $7 billion. $7 billion worth of investment along 20 miles of public and private economic development. But one of the things that we just recently calculated in is what are the jobs? So not only do we talk about jobs when we do construction, and the construction of all those buildings was one thing, but the ongoing economic development, that's 35,000 jobs that are ongoing because of those buildings and both public and private that have been built along the light rail line today. That's also another over $1 billion to our schools. So when we talk about how development impacts our community, it impacts on a wide range. Yeah, the city gets sales tax, the county gets sales, the state, but our schools also benefit from this. And I know that we'd expect to see something very similar to that in the tripling of the miles of light rail in Phoenix.
Well, I am so excited about it. I want everyone to get involved and to pay a lot of attention and understand thoroughly what they're going to gain from it, because everybody is going to gain from this. So thank you for all your hard work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman.
That's all the time we have for this month's On the Issues. If you have any questions or comments about the show, call my office, 602-262-7444, or visit my website at phoenix.gov/District 1. We'll see you next time on The Issues.